I had a vision, and the vision that I had was Christ kneeling. Thomas the Hermit in Sacred Heart Church, Waco, Texas, and I'm going to tell you about sharing in Christ's sufferings. Now, to start off with, I'm going to start with a very extreme example. St. Catherine of Siena, as a little girl at the age of 7, betrothed herself to Jesus to be his bride. And she kept that vow. She kept it as a young girl, as a young lady, as a mature woman. Now, not only did she do that, as a little girl, she deprived herself of sleep, only getting about a half an hour of sleep a day. And later, she deprived herself completely of sleep. Don't ask me how. But she did this to share in Christ's sufferings. She laid on planks, and under her head was a board. That was her bed. She ate very little food, sometimes eating nothing. She stopped eating meat as a little girl. I do not know what that has to do with vegetarian or veganism, but it's interesting, isn't it? But she stopped eating meat, and then later she ate only herbs, and only a few of them. The Lord allowed her to be afflicted with various ailments and problems, and also to undergo severe demonic attacks at times, which she always triumphed with through prayer, through perseverance, through love. So what does St. Catherine of Siena have to tell us about sharing in Christ's sufferings? Anyways, let's take a little closer look at it. She was in rapture, and she dictated to her secretary this extraordinary work called the Dialogues. And let me read part of that, and we're going to look at what the Lord told St. Catherine and what St. Catherine can tell us. Okay, this is very interesting. This is on a treatise of divine providence, and the subtitle for this paragraph, How Finite Works Are Not Sufficient for Punishment or Recompense Without the Perpetual Affection of Love. Do you not know, dear daughter, that all the sufferings which the soul endures or can endure in this life are insufficient to punish one smallest fault? Because the offense being done to me, who am the infinite God, calls for an infinite satisfaction. However, I wish that you should know that not only the pains that are given to men in this life are given as punishment, but as correction, in order to chastise a son when he offends. Though it is true that both the guilt and the penalty can be expiated by the desire of the soul, that is, by true contrition and through the finite pain endured, but through the infinite desire, because God, who is infinite, wishes for infinite love and infinite sorrow. Okay, I read that kind of quick, and I hope you kind of heard it. The first part said that all the suffering that you do without a desire of love and remorse has no effect on the sins that have been committed, that you've committed, or that others have committed. My creature, in two ways, in one way through her sorrow for her own sins, which she has committed against me, her Creator, in the other way through her sorrow for the sins which she sees her neighbor commit against me. Of such as these, insomuch as they have infinite desire, that is, are joined to me by an affection of love, and therefore grieve when they offend me or see me offended. So every pain, whether spiritual or corporal, from wherever it may come, receives infinite merit and satisfies for a guilt which deserved an infinite penalty. But when a person, out of love for God and sorrow for what they have done, goes through suffering, then God accepts that. So it's more about the love and the contrition than it is about some kind of finite work or temporal work that we do here in this world. Although their works are finite and done in finite time, but inasmuch as they possess the virtue of desire and sustain their suffering with desire and contrition and infinite displeasure against their guilt, their pain is held worthy. Now you hear about stories about Catholics who are trying to win God's approval by harming themselves or trying to suffer. And the church has always kind of frowned upon this. It is a detour, it is a misstep. Those people need to establish a relationship of love. If Christ calls them into some aspect of suffering, that's a different matter. And if that is done in love and in contrition of their sins. And this is where we're getting into a problem with some Catholics. So do not run towards harming yourself or suffering. It might be useless. Establish a relationship of love. When Christ feels that you are ready, he will move you into a higher understanding of that love, to do what the scriptures say, sharing in Christ's sufferings. Now I'm going to look at a Bible passage for you so that we can talk about sharing in Christ's suffering. This is from Romans 8, verse 17. And if children, then heirs, heirs of God and joint heirs with Christ, if only we suffer with him, so that we may also be glorified with him. Okay, if only we suffer with him, so that we may also be glorified with him. I had a vision, and the vision that I had was Christ kneeling for me with his hands clenched hard, and it was like he was saying to me to keep going. As I began looking closer at the image that I was seeing, Christ loomed larger, like a lot bigger than me, and he looked very heavy. He looked weighted down. So weighted down that his knees on the hard marble floor began to bleed. And as they bleed, his blood went out and it washed away the effects of sin. Not just the bringing about of a reconciliation, but he also wiped away the temporal effects of sin. Then I began to think about what was being shown me, and I heard these words: share in my sufferings, share in my victory, share in my crown. So what does this mean? And the crown part, or the sharing, had to be a choice. I can choose it, and I can share in his crown. There's a reward for those who share in Christ's sufferings for others. St. Catherine understood this. When St. Catherine died, it was revealed to her friends how much of a crown that she had earned, and it was significant. It was extremely significant. So this is kind of what I understand it means to share in his sufferings. When I became homeless, and it caused me to become closer to Christ, because I identified more in his sufferings, only in a small way, and I realize that there's others that are in my situation as well, but I don't know if they united their suffering with Christ's sufferings through love. That's what I did, And so in some ways I began to understand for the first time what it meant to share in Christ's sufferings. Anyways, this is Thomas the Hermit. I'm just sharing this stuff with you about the life of St. Catherine, that extraordinary woman, a little bit about my own experience, and what Paul said in Romans. By the way, the references to sharing in Christ's sufferings are many, especially in the letters. They are all over the scriptures. Check it out. This is Thomas the Hermit. Say a prayer for me. I am praying for you. I'll talk to you later.